I hate pickup truck culture or pickup cult culture. That doesn't work at all. Pickup truck people, and like I come from a long line of pickup truck people, blue collar people, but nobody uses it like that anymore. They're like beautiful looking trucks, and I don't even have a problem with that. It is a status symbol now. These are like almost $200,000 trucks, but like it's also people blocking sidewalks and bike lanes, like just oblivious to the world around them. It's very neoliberal, right? Like I call out guy. I throw this is my I like to do acts of minor vigilantism. Like I'll take when I'm walking my dog. I'll take the dog shit and I'll throw it in the back of their trucks, right? Yeah, whatever. It's just I know what I'm doing. It's crazy, but it is what I do. I once came across some guys who had parked half in the bike lane, half on the sidewalk to go through their phone, and I was just like walking by and I was like called them assholes and like, ugh, and I'm like, well, you do realize like you're making it hard for people in wheelchairs or people who have strollers to get by here. And they start laughing. And at the time, before I read the book I'm talking about today, at the time I thought like I was mad, but now I understand it, right? Like I get it. Like you laugh because the idea of having responsibility for your freedom or having responsibility for your actions seems absurd. This is your right. You are a consumer, and when you bought the truck, you bought the right to knock elderly people into the road and not have to think about it. That's the trick.
Rick, have you ever heard the expression, the customer is always right?
So this week on the pod, I'm going to be talking about Erich Fromm's book, Escape from Freedom. I don't know if you ever read that, but it was a very interesting book. Another existential book. Basically what he talks about is like this idea of as Ernest Beckner talks about, Erich Fromm says how we're trying to avoid existential anxiety or the truth of our situation, that essentially we're all going to die alone, and so we create narratives and ideas. But he takes it a little bit further, right? He says how when we create these narratives, when we create these ideas, what we're doing is we are what Erich Fromm is talking about in his book Escape from Freedom is the freedom from and the freedom to. So in our societies, we all have freedom to do whatever we want and like freedom to do what we want. And that's our idea of freedom, right? So in like, feudal times or serf times, you'd have people who were relieved of the freedom from. The freedom from is like the idea of responsibility. So let's start all over. If you don't know, this week's episode's about Erich Fromm's Escape from Freedom. It's a very interesting existential look or an existential breakdown. This one kind of like really I related to, and I really kind of like introduced it into my life, this framework, this idea. So basically, Erich Fromm talks about two types of freedom, freedom to and freedom from. And he starts the book out in like feudal times, talking about how the average person was relieved of freedom because you worked for someone. Your whole life was dedicated to this person or God. You really didn't have any, ambitions outside of that. So you were relieved by that idea, right? You were free, but you also weren't free. Now that we've gone past, we've gone through enlightenment and we understand these concepts, and we're not really dependent on the church anymore, although some people probably think I'm being blasphemous, but we're not, right? We are more free than we've ever been. But that comes a problem of existential anxiety when we make choices. So what we do, we want freedom to do things. We want the freedom to do what we want. And we choose the freedom to do what we want. But in a lot of cases, what a lot of people do, and I would argue most people do, is the freedom from freedom. People want freedom from freedom. The idea that Eric Fromm believes that true freedom is not only being able to move about and say or do whatever you want, but there's a responsibility. There's existentialism tied to it. There's other people out there. For example, like all these people that, talk about freedom of speech, and then, they went over to the Riyadh Comedy Festival, and now they're like kind of like backtracking or fighting people about it. It's like that idea is like, freedom of speech used as an authority to say like, I can't be responsible for what I say on stage because these people, cancel culture, will stop me from saying it. So what that does, it relieves people of their own freedom, their own choice, their choices, because that's a choice. If you want to make trans jokes, you want to make, you want to say racial slurs, you're free to do that. Having people not like you is the responsibility or the existentialism you have to accept. And really what you're battling and what you're denying by outsourcing that anxiety to freedom of speech or to whatever authority which allows you to be whoever you want to be, is what you're doing is you're denying your own freedom and your need for an authority, as in like the serfs had God, or they had an owner, right, who controlled their lives. They had that authority. Now you don't, so we have to create authority through things like I said, like a freedom of speech and stuff like that. Like, oh, you can't, I can't say this because the woke crowd will come and get me. But okay, but you can say it. What you're worried about is dying alone. What you're worried about is not being liked. And that's the existential problem, right? Not being liked means you die alone, means you be ostracized and die alone. And that's what you're trying to avoid. You're trying to take that responsibility and put it on a daddy. And even like I mentioned the Riyadh Comedy Festival, that's another perfect example of that. Like we, in a way, as a society, that thing all blew up last week where I guess this will be a couple of weeks from now, but it blew up and everyone's like, oh, these comedians are horrible people. And it gives us, and I'm not trying to take away the fact that, Riyadh is a bad place. And I'm not, but we also live in the world where America is also a bad place. And America, right? Like we live in countries, if you're North American or if you're in a Western country, we created this, right? The reason why Saudi Arabia or these people can murder a journalist and we just brush it under the rug is because of capital, because they can afford to. They have power and they have money. And so that's our responsibility, each and every one of us. Even though we have presidents and prime ministers making choices, we still have a say in that. So when we point out individuals like these comedians going to the Riyadh Comedy Festival, we blow that up. Yes, it's true. It is a bad choice, but it is also us denying the reality that we're in that choice as well. I talk about Baudrillard later on, but it's a Disneyland, right? So what we're doing is like we're offloading our own existential anxiety of being complicit in this. Like if you drive a car, if you have a phone, any of these things, we take resources from these people. It's not in a vacuum, right? You live in a world of causality. So when we sit here and just blame it on, it's Bill Burr or this person or that person or whatever, what we're doing is relieving ourselves of our own responsibility, and we're creating authoritarians out of these people to guide our lives. It's really fascinating. Uh, People think I'm insane. Because I call out people. Like, I've been on this tirade. I don't know if it's a tirade, but like I try to pick and choose, but like I was in the park with my dogs. It's always with my dogs. My dogs are reactive. I have 2 dogs and I got to walk them by myself, and it's not easy, but they're very reactive. And I was at the park, and it's an on leash park. It's not an off leash park, and this lady was out there with her dog walking around, and she was I'm like, ugh, and I'm trying to avoid her. But then her dog ran up to my dog and they're barking and blah, 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 right? And I'm like, and I'm so angry in this moment. And I'm like, I called her a moron. And then she just shifted into, don't call me a moron. And that's where the conversation became. It just was. It became that, don't call me a moron, don't call me a moron. She had nothing wrong. When I left, and she still had her dog off leash wandering around. Right. And she also had a pickup truck taking up 2 spaces. So, but like, yeah, it was that. I gave her the opportunity, or I didn't give her, but there was an opportunity for her to shift her existential anxiety onto me, where I became the person that called her an asshole. But really, what she's terrified is being a bad person. It's a cognitive dissonance. I made a mistake. I'm a bad person, and someone got mad at me, and blah, 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 blah. Right? I have anxiety about my dogs, and like, I keep them on leash and away from other dogs on purpose. I can't blame people. But like, this is why I used to confront people all the time, but I tried not to. I pick and choose my battles because I know that existential anxiety riles people up. It just makes people like, you're going to get a confrontation. It's very weird because like the day after I read this book, I was talking to my wife. We were driving up to a friend's house, and this guy was driving just ahead of us, and he started drifting into our lane. He cut us off, and then we get to the light, because I was explaining this concept to my wife, and we get to the light, and the guy rolls down the window and was like, "Oh, sorry, there was a blue bin in the road," and I'm like, "Oh, you're entitled," and I rolled up the window, and it was like, it's so pervasive. Like, it's not even serendipitous. It was so pervasive that people need to protect themselves from themselves. They do not want freedom. They want to do what they want, but they want people to tell them not to. And I've dealt with these kind of people my whole life. I mean, I've done it. Like, I do it too. And like, I remember, like, again, freedom of speech comics on Facebook telling me, I've had people where they were like, why can't I say the N-word? And I was like, well, it's racist. Saying the N-word's racist, right? If you want to say the N-word, go ahead. And they're like, oh, you're telling me you can't say the N-word? I'm like, no, I'm not telling him to do anything. And they're like, oh, okay, so then what are you saying? And they got so confused with the idea that you have the freedom to do what you want, but I also can think of you as a racist. I remember I used to do a podcast with a guy who was arguing to do blackface, and we were going back and forth, and I'm like, basically blackface is racist. And he's like, so what do you want me to do? I'm like, I don't know. That's up to you. Like, I do whatever you want. I don't care. Do what you want. The fact that we're having this conversation tells me who you are. And that, if you ever find yourself into that situation, that giving them the freedom to be who they are is the most terrifying and confusing thing for anyone, because it becomes existential. It becomes, you make your choice, and then you need me to validate you. And you'll see how quickly these freedom of speech people, or these people terrified of whatever, need your validation. It's all about authority. And I really, the more I come across this stuff, the more I realize, how much people love authority, right? Because it relieves you of choice. It's a, do you know what I mean? Like you just, okay, so like I was driving with my wife the other day after reading this book and I was explaining the concept to her. And then this guy was driving in the other lane just ahead of us and he moved over like suddenly and cut us off. And then he came to a light and we're just like, whatever, like you just move on. But the guy rolled down his window. He's like, oh, sorry. There was a bin. And I was just like, oh, okay. I rolled up my window. I'm like, there you go. That's it. Right. Like we live in a system of people wanting relief from being responsible. And I really believe if we could, I mean, we would fight it, but I think if we could, most of us would go back to being serfs. I think that's why we have like a large right-wing political apparatus currently in the world. A lot of things are falling apart, and to have a daddy is amazing. It's a psychological diaper. I think a lot of us want to be someone to take us into the change room at McDonald's, put us on that table, and then just change our dirty bum while we complain. Oh, how dare you, right? And then put a sucky soother in our mouths. Before I read this book, I think I really emotionally reacted to these people because and myself, like I include myself into these people, but I really emotionally reacted to people like this in these situations because I have a justice drive. And then I read and this kind of stuff, this lack of responsibility for your choices and your action. I get blamed for a lot of people's stuff sometimes. And I used to get so angry, but now reading it, I'm like, oh, of course. Like the Klan is a perfect example of this kind of idea. A lot of racist organizations. It's so weird to me that they have to dance around, like dog whistle and dance around the idea of being racist. But that's your organization. You're the Klan. Why are you worried about people liking you or accepting you? I don't get that. But it's just like you made a costume for your racism and you're like, no, not us. Don't look at me. Anyway, that's what I think. What do you think? Leave a comment in the comments. Yeah, leave a comment in the comment section of the video. Thanks. See you next week.